Hey Inspirers, today celebrates the 28th anniversary of the American with Disabilities Act. This act was signed into law by George H.W. Bush back in 1990. I have been honored to be part of this community. And I guess, the biggest thing for me that I learned about this community was after my amputation. And it's that disability is not a definition of who a person is. It's not their capability. It is only an identifier. I used to shun the word because of its negative connotation. I now realize, now I can no more disassociate myself of being a person who is an amputee than I can being a person of color. I owe my remarkable strides of growth to my mentors. Number one, the Honorable Tony Coelho. He's the drafter of the ADA, the American with Disabilities Act. Also, Judith Heumann, the grandmother of the ADA, and Ann Cody, who is my guide, has been my guide since I've started this and been thrust into this position of amalgamating disability sport on one hand and disability advocacy on the other. Ann told me before I even asked another question to read the book No Pity by Joseph Shapiro. My true turning point came when I was nominated and won the Paul G. Hearn Emerging Leadership Award back in 2007. Just opened my eyes. That I was given by the American Association of People with Disabilities. Up until that point, I really struggled with how I should identify myself. I didn't feel disabled, so maybe I should have a word that negated my disability. Put a distance between us. Maybe that word was differently abled. Maybe that word was other abilities. Maybe those words are getting back to quote unquote normal. I understand now that I am normal. I understand now that just because I don't have one of my legs, that does not make me abnormal. I have crafted a whole keynote message around the new normal, where new means no prior point of reference. This means carrying no baggage from our past into our present. And normal means the everyday or the typical or the average, the usual. How therefore can we then amputate the things that hold us back in our past and truly be authentic to ourselves in our present? Shouldn't I be able to bring my entire self to work, to play, to my personal interest? There are those who might call me impaired, but impaired does not reflect who I am either. A driver who is drunk on the road is driving impaired. They are not driving disabled. If stopped by the police and they're thrown into the slammer for the night, guess what? Then they become unimpaired or sober. I have an amputation. My leg is not growing back, y'all, except for some miracle, I guess. I remain disabled no matter how sober I might become. But I refuse to allow the word disability to be a negative word in my life. I choose to take the power out of the word. I choose a force and force people to see me as John. After all, it is the Americans with Disabilities Act that has spurred a global movement from the United States across the world. It is the United Nations Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities. In the need for great conversation, I have seen the business eyes opened of all these companies, Fortune 1000 companies all across the United States and the world, and they have taken the Disability Equality Index, sponsored by the American Association for People with Disabilities, or AAPD, and the Disability In, formerly the United States Business Leaders Network, or USBLN, and I've had the distinct honor to speak to many of those companies across the globe. The topic that disability is a D in diversity, Disability Employment Awareness Month is coming up in October, and I would love to have a conversation with you and your organization. Not really about awareness, although we can get into some of those things, though that is a starting point, but more so in the activation and the responsibility to a population that only continues to grow. Let us identify stigma, like my own personal stigma that I had to overcome. The stigma of other people believing for me what I could or could not do. What was that based on? It was based upon what they thought they could or could not do if they were the amputee. And finally, societal stigmas. How does that manifest in your organization? You see, 1 in 5 Americans currently have a disability, hidden or open. Disability is the only identified class of people that is non-discriminatory. As we celebrate this day, let's think about all of the people who have sacrificed to get us to this point, and the new leadership, those like my buddy Kerry Gray, who will take us into the future. My name's John Register. Go forth and inspire your world, and happy ADA Day.